Good evening, Peter.
Good morning, Ron. Got it right this time.
So we've already had a little preliminary discussion, but we're going to start with the good morning and the good evening for the purpose of this public video.
As we do. Well, I've been doing a few little interviews and talks with people lately, so I'm getting very much used to all these time zones now. I can freely operate in 3 different time zones at once, I'd say now.
Yes, the U.S. one, and then you're doing the one with Lucas Christians, of course. And he's in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah, he's in Maastricht in the south of the Netherlands. So for us to get together is a different thing altogether. So we try and sort of spread the interview duties for Double Dutch radios between us in whatever time zone is easiest for us. So whoever gets the interview is the one who's closest in time or most convenient in time at that particular point in time. But it's a great progression for me doing the radio now, and we've had the first show on last Friday, and
Right. I watched it, or listened anyway.
Yeah, thanks. And we've had so many.
Hour and 17 minutes or something like that, or an hour and something minutes. It was over.
Yeah, an hour and 17 minutes. That's an hour in my speak, so it always runs over. Come on. An hour is never enough. But we've had so many good comments about it, and it's really really encouraging to see, because where Lucas and I clicked is that we're both wanting to go to center. We both want to reconcile the opposites and be the observer of the opposites of duality in the center, watching the dance of duality, not being involved in the duality, as you call it, the duality. And duality is only really excruciatingly painful when you're on either side of the extremes of the polarities. And so we're very much about, we're not truth radio. We're not pointing out the cabal and saying, well, this is what they're doing and they're criminals. I mean, we do have news items, and we do point some of that stuff out too. But we do it with a laugh. We don't take them too seriously. And we don't go to the other extreme either, as, you got to, escape the ugliness by being in the light. We're very much about being in the center, and that's really where the new energy and the new paradigm is leading us into, is being in the center, so that the influx of energy into your being is qualified by your choice. And it's creative. Your choice of how you interpret the energy is entirely yours, and it's not dictated by either of the polarities. So you're basically grabbing the energy before it, becoming aware of the energy before it goes into either extreme polarity, and then directing it as will. So that's really about becoming co-creative with the universe and becoming co-creative with nature and with each other. And we believe that the time for that is now. That the time for that change to become manifest is now. We believe that wars will cease when we cease to acknowledge them, or not acknowledge them, but when we overcome them within ourselves. And we think humanity is ready to move into the neutral zone, the inspiration zone, the where life is playful and creative zone. And that's very much what we're heading towards. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about new paradigm and how it's unfolding, as have we all, as have you too, no doubt, Ron.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Magenta Pixie, but I've been listening to her videos, her channeled messages for a couple years at least, maybe 2 or 3 years, and her new one that she came out with yesterday I thought was really good, because she was talking about, of course, the ascension process, but she said there can be no transcendence without integration.
Yeah.
In other words, we've got that's what you're talking about in the neutral zone. We've got to integrate our humanity, not escape our humanity, but integrate our humanity and bring the higher paradigm or the higher energies down into the lower realities to transform them. But it's about integrating the opposites. It's not about denying them. There's so much spirituality that is a process of denial, as I see it.
Yes, absolutely, and so much spirituality is just basically born out of escape. Whether you escape into alcohol or drugs or extreme religions or extreme points of view or extreme political, it's an escape, and it's running away from the darkness, and it's very much not about that. And integration is very much key, and people become intimidated and afraid of their own emotions, their own fears, and so they class a lot of what they're feeling as not good, and then they end up with an inner conflict, and they have to run into escape. So then what we call emotion actually turns into fantasy. All that we have is good, but it becomes perverted when we escape into separateness, when we don't see it as a tool that serves wholeness. So in separateness, our imagination becomes fantasy, and our fantasy becomes a struggle for possessions or a domination of others. Or so our emotion really, in terms of separateness, is perverted into a fantasy that then gets enraged by a commercial machine and commercials and materialism. But if we actually see emotion in the service of the whole, of wholeness, of oneness, emotion becomes the most wonderful, creative, powerful, creative tool that we have. Is quite possibly the jewel of the jewel of all creation, human emotion, and in terms of what it can create on a physical plane. So it all depends. Everything that we have is good. Every emotion, thought that is centered upon like service for the greater good or wholeness is a good thought, is a good emotion. So there's nothing wrong with thought. I don't believe in those spiritual teachers who tell you that thought is no good and you got to walk around like a zombie with no thoughts in your head. Thought is not good when it's centered upon separateness, when it's centered upon escape, because then thought just becomes desire, desire becomes the emotion, and desire is what turns the emotion into a fantasy rather than an emotion, a creative feeling. And there's nothing wrong with desire either, because if desire is focused on the service of the whole, then that desire is the universe's desire, is aligned with universal principles, and uses thought and emotion to create fantastic, beautiful forms. And so everything that we have on board is good as long as it's centered on wholeness, not on separateness.
That's a really good point. And the meditation I had yesterday morning before I did that video was eye-opening for me. And I think I titled it "And God Created Contrast," and it was very good. But it wasn't. It was very good because it wasn't polarized. We have polarized the opposites rather than allowing them to be a perfect unity.
Yes, and this is
a perfect expression of choice.
Well, it's part of a necessary cycle, though. I mean, in order to try and explain the way I see things, you really have to look at the cycle of paradigm cycle, or in the old Indian, the yugas. You have the Kali Yuga, and who knows all the terms? Who cares? But you have all the different eras, and of course, every cycle of there is always a cycle of paradigm. Okay, you always begin probably where we are now, or where we actually are a bit further than that. You begin with a culture in decline, and you begin with a dissatisfaction amongst the intelligentsia, if you want to call that, the more awake people, a dissatisfaction with that culture in decline, a dissatisfaction with education, with government, with religion, with any form of authority. And they're usually the people who start to pick up on the early dawn of a new paradigm, of a shift into a new paradigm. And that goes on and on. They start educating people, they start talking, they start working together, and then slowly, bit by bit by bit, more and more people under the pressure of the shifting energy start to become awake. And when they become awake, they see that their old culture has become corrupt, their old government's been corrupt, nothing serves them anymore. And they start to feel within their hearts an interpretation of the new paradigm energy precipitating into what could be deemed the forming of a new culture. And so when this reaches quorum, then the new culture is born in the hearts of humanity and the minds of humanity. And like a seed building up, seeds build up, I don't know how many pounds per square inch in pressure, but it's unbelievable before they actually crack and the plant comes out. And that is what our culture is at the moment. The brickwork of our culture has got a seed growing in it that is starting to crack and push through, and is going to break down the old culture. The old culture is going to break down by itself, and then new ways of education and value exchange, for instance, like what Heather Tucci is doing. New forms of value exchange, which she's announcing soon. So new paradigm means to a culture will be established, and that's always the way it begins. And so you have an awake sort of, what do you call it, advanced party that's awake, setting a new culture for a new paradigm. And then sooner or later, when that quorum becomes big enough, people start accepting that as a new culture. And then you have new education. And when you have one or two generations gone through a new education system that actually serves wholeness, not separateness, then you end up with a society that's awake. And then the need for any structure of government or any means of exchange just falls away. We don't need it anymore because we're all acting spontaneously for the greater good. We're all acting spontaneously in service to creation and in service to each other and in service to ourselves by those means. And so we begin with the setting of a culture in a new paradigm, and then as we move a bit further in, the culture becomes usurped by the awake individual. Everybody's awake individual. And so these go as far as I can tell in 26,000, 24, 25, 26,000 years cycles. And so after a few thousand years or a few hundred years of culture even, you start to see that culture falls away. There is no need for leadership. There is no need for representation of value. There is no need for instituted education or religion, or because everybody knows themselves to be eternal essence embodied. And then, so in that middle period, you have pretty much what you could call the Garden of Eden as described in the Bible, because everybody is living totally in tune, abundantly happy, free, without infringing upon each other or nature. And then towards the end of the cycle, with 10, 12,000 years of the cycle left, it starts to go into decline. People start to fall asleep. People start to fall into separateness. And as more and more people then start to slide into separateness, those who are still awake then become the sages, the kings, the leaders, and they set, again, a culture because they're trying to stop the decline. So they actually say, well, people can't see themselves as eternal essence anymore, so now I have to institute some form of religious practice or religious system so that they're reminded of their divinity. And so they begin to reinstitute a culture towards the end of the cycle, and that then works for a while, and then they build like big energetic monolithic structures such as pyramids, or the monolithic structures that you find everywhere, ancient culture structures that you find everywhere around the world, Angkor Wat, the pyramids in South America, whatnot. So they actually do all of that to prevent their culture from going into decline. And of course, inevitably, under the change of the cosmos, it does. So towards the end of the cycle, you get the thing that we've just been through again, which is that all the institutions that were set up, education, religion, government, kings, energetic devices such as pyramids, etc., they all begin to go into decline. And then they decline so far that the majority really is totally asleep. And then out of that, individuals begin to awake. There you have your Jesus, your Buddha, the individual that goes totally against the grain and starts to actually grab the first inklings of a new culture and a new paradigm and sees it coming very, very much in the distance. And so the cycle becomes complete, because then we get to where we have been now, is that total decline of the culture, the total corruption of the culture, the corruption of the leaders, the corruption of the representation of value, the corruption of the ones that are supposed to connect us to God, religion, religious practices, spiritual practices. You see that the whole hierarchical system then reaches peak and starts to crumble and starts to fall apart. And that is what we have gone through. And I believe that that seed is now ready to crack. So, it's nothing that hasn't happened before. It's just that we go back to our natural self in this process of awakening, our natural self, just the way the universe made us, just right. And then once we fall back into our natural self and remember who we are, then we are open to receive the higher vibration of the universe and to lift into a higher expression of this oneness. So I do believe that there is an evolutionary advancement every time this cycle goes round. There is a higher level of energy that kicks in, and so. And that's why I think it's necessary for that cycle of, build up and decline to occur. So it makes way for a higher expression every time. And so when you look at that little cycle I just described and you start to think about, well, where are we now? Well, it's exactly where we are. The new paradigm already exists. It exists in the hearts and the minds of people. Like in the radio show, I think, was it in the radio show or was I talking to somebody else?
I have the same problem. I sometimes forget the context in which I said something.
Yeah. I just
Which conversation was that?
I hide behind my aging grey hair. That helps. I've got an excuse. But Johnny the garbage collector. Let's take him, and he's under the old hierarchical system. His highest station in life, the highest value he could reach as a person for the corporate system, was somebody who drives a big truck and picks up garbage. But in Johnny the garbage man's heart, and in his mind, he's actually had an idea for Back to the Future flux capacitor, and he's got this great idea to invent a free energy machine, which would come in handy right now. And so there he is. He's working 40, 50 hours a week as a garbage collector. He's struggling to pay off his mortgage. He's got the screaming kids to feed at home and get to school and deal with all the rubbish that society throws at him. And he just does not have the peace, nor the space, nor the finances, nor the means to create his true passion, which is what the universe inspired him to do, gave him the idea of a free energy machine. So because he's not a physicist, he can't get a grant to do something from the powers. And he has to go around collecting garbage, which is killing him because it's not his passion. So now imagine
killing his family, injuring everybody around him unconsciously.
Yes, because he's a hurt person, so he hurts others. He projects that onto others. Exactly right. And so what happens, and this is the question, this is the point that we're getting to, is... are we going to be able to lift this yoke off this man so he can have the peace, the freedom, and the means to create his free energy machine? And this is what the paradigm shift does. Like, Heather always also says it's already done, and I heard a voice in my head in meditation the other week, and it says, it's already done, and I know exactly what you mean, because all the solutions are there in the hearts and minds of people. And the moment that seed breaks and it breaks down the walls, the vestiges of the old paradigm and the old culture, Johnny the garbage collector is a man who is free in his mind and his heart, with some resources, because other people will connect with him and the universe will start conspiring for him to be able to do his passion. And that's what's happening.
The synchronicities start happening.
Yes, the synchronicity will happen. Somebody will say, well, my Aunt Myrtle died and left me $10 million, and I think your idea is great. Why don't I give you a couple of million and you can set up a workshop in your garage, you can stop doing garbage and start inventing free energy, and that's where the weight of the paradigm is coming to bear. So, we were talking before about how they're instituting their police states and all that sort of stuff, and they just slapped a smart meter on my wall while I was out, the other week.
Had you already told them not to?
Well, I really wasn't aware of it because the electricity account is in my mother-in-law's name, so I didn't actually get any communications from them myself. So I was taken totally by surprise by that one.
See, I sent them warning through the system with registered mail and everything else that, hey, you're not to put this on my house, ever. And
Well,
they got a call from their public relations department saying that all of the information that I had that smart meters were bad was erroneous and fraudulent information, and that they're really harmless.
oh yeah.
And that ultimately they would put it in anyway, but they would give me a breather and not do it right away.
See, what they are is they're part of a control grid, and I spoke to Anne Bressington, who's a independent parliamentarian in the state of South Australia here in the Parliament, and they've just brought a law in there where the I suppose it's the equivalent of your EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has been granted rights to enter a person's home for environmental reasons without any warrant, without any notice, to just bust in through your front door and say, hey, step aside, Buster, we're going to check out your house. And if you see that in conjunction with smart meters where they can totally monitor how you're using energy, then the energy company can tell the environmental guys that, hey, he's not using power in a responsible way, and then they can come busting through your door and start slapping defect notices and labels on your electrical system and hassle you out and invade your freedom and privacy and all that sort of stuff. That's part of an agenda, yeah. But why are they? The David Icke's totalitarian tiptoe is now at the moment turning into a totalitarian speed march. Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Because they can sense. Yeah, bingo. They can sense. I was saying to a friend the other day that who said, "Oh, they're really laying it on thick now, aren't they? They're really putting the power on." I said, "Yeah, they're putting the power on, but their generator is running on setting 11, and it's about to blow a head gasket, and it's about to run out of fuel too, and that's why they've cranked it up to max." But it's just the old paradigm. Scotty is going, she can't take it no more, Captain. She can't take it. She's gonna blow, and that's what's about to happen.
The cornered rat sees that it's cornered and lashes out at anything in any way that it can.
And I'm not mocking them either. I mean, don't underestimate a wounded animal that's been driven into a corner, because if you do that, you're you're an absolute fool. Don't underestimate them for a moment, but start paying into the new. And that's what Double Dutch Radio, doubledutchradio.com, by the way, is all about, is actually finding that creative potentiality middle ground and start creating the new. And I think so many people are focused on that now. And I think enough people are focused on that now, so that big changes will start to manifest in our society in an extremely short time frame. And by that I mean months, not years or decades.
That's really good, because I hear so many people say it's going to take 20 or 30 years to bring the changes about. And as far as everybody awakening, that's, I'm sure, true. But it will never happen at all unless there's certain things that are fairly abrupt in their manifestation.
Yep.
Because it can't. Some things cannot be a gradual change. It has to be a sudden shift. And I've seen it that way for a long time. Although some people argue with me about it. No, it's going to take a long, long time. You'll be long dead before you'll never see it.
It's an explosion. The basic move is an explosion, and that's, I can only go by certain shifts in awareness that I've undergone myself. And one of them is when you get to a certain point, there is a buildup of energy, and it attracts a lightning bolt from the universe. You've built up that energy, and that charge is there, and it gets met by another charge. And when those two charges meet, there is an explosion. There is literally an explosion of consciousness and awareness and love and creative potential. And that's the point we're getting to, that seed that is building up all this internal pressure. It's just about to, and once it goes, it goes. And that doesn't mean, like you said, that everybody gets enlightened. No, we do have to have a culture phase, a culture education phase for people. And that's fine. We don't all have to awaken. It's just that if the majority accepts something as culture, and even if they just mentally accept it as culture, they start to try and live by it. And the moment that you then educate them and help them, then they will awaken very, very quickly. So we have to go through a culture stage before everybody's awakened. Now, that might take a generation or two, possibly one. Yeah,
that's where the bridges have to be laid.
Yep, exactly. But preceding that is that explosion of consciousness, and I do believe that we are going to see that starting this year and increasingly much more so over the next few years. Because we're not in opposition. Once we cease to want to fight the old, we're not in opposition anymore. Therefore, our energy becomes free to totally be committed to the building of the new. So as much as they've slapped a smart meter on my wall at the moment, I really don't care that much about it, because I could get distracted from what I'm doing and waste all my time fighting the old. And okay, they will get, in due course, they will get a courtesy notice or two, and a very friendly but insistent phone call asking them to remove the thing from my premises. That's going to happen, but it's not the main focus of my life. I'm not going, oh my God, it's Agenda 21, they're coming to get me, I must fight them. Because that's the reaction they want you to have, because that prolongs paying energy into their old paradigm. So there's a big difference between non-compliance and actually fighting. And that's what we got to get out of. And that's another reason why we started the radio show, because we see that there were so many truthers, quote unquote, out there who really just pointing the finger at the cabal. There's Alex Jones. They're coming to get you. They're buying 100 million hollow point bullets. They're rolling out their trucks. I'm telling you, you are going to be dead tomorrow. You're going to be in a FEMA camp, Yeah, set them up to fight the old. Give them new fears instead of their old fears, and so much of the Truther Radio is set out to do that, and it's not really focused on building the new, and this is where we got to get to. We got to get to we know what they're doing. That's fine. Let's get over it. Don't let them in if non-comply if you have to interact with them, but don't fight them, but non-comply. And start building the new. Let's get together and start building the new, because it is already, just go and look around you in your society. And if you look with the eyes of the new, you will see the new everywhere, and you'll say, hey, I'll tap you on the shoulder and I'll finance you instead of giving money to that old paradigm thing. I'll spend my money over there, and instead of buying Monsanto's food, I'll actually go to the organic farmers markets who sell direct, and I'll give money to them instead. And you'll start becoming responsible with what you have, and then how you apply what modicum of wealth or insight or physical labor. People like Ron Findlay, who go into old neighborhoods and gang neighborhoods and unite people over growing food and stuff like that. It's just fantastic. Go help Ron Findlay if you haven't got money. He says he's happy to talk to anybody as long as they bring a spade. Well, go and do that. Willing workers on organic farms, permaculture, food forests, all the solutions are already here. Go find one, go align with it. Don't whinge that your state, your nanny state, is not taking care of you, or that your state wants to put you in a FEMA camp. Go build the new. That's what I'm about now. Screw the smart meter. Pardon the French.
Peter, I really appreciate this conversation about the new paradigm, and the overview that you provided of the cycle, the 24 to 26,000 year cycle, means that we're coming out of Kali Yuga, going into a golden age.
Yes.
But we'll become complacent again and have to create the pain and suffering once again at some point, several millenniums in the future.
On a higher level too. Ouch!
On a higher level. I mean, that's the cycle of creation, and it's not an illusion; it's an experience. But anyway, I do thank you, and I always enjoy the conversations with you. And you have any closing remarks that you'd like to say?
Well, I just want to say thanks, and I reciprocate. I love talking to you. I love your videos, and I think we will see big changes soon. So hang in there, start sponsoring the new, and wow, fantastic things are afoot. And thank you very much for being part of that groundswell that we're all creating with helping each other in a peer-to-peer fashion to become more awake and more alive and more creative.
Yeah, one final question about Double Dutch. Is that going to be a weekly program, or is it, whenever you feel like it, or have
Mm, we,
something
we,
to share?
we're
Or?
going to do it weekly. We're going to do it weekly.
Okay,
We're having a good time doing it. So, and we're aiming to sort of get it live so we can have callers and stuff like that in the future. At the moment, it's just podcast format. But yeah, once a week. Look for it around the Thursday, Friday mark in the US.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to clarify that for my own thinking. I will definitely tune in each time, and I encourage others to do so as well. Anyway, thank you, Peter, and you have a beautiful rest of. Oh, actually, it's Sunday night for you already. So you're
Yep.
ready to start a new week. I
Yeah,
still have a whole
exactly.
day ahead of me. so
Well,
thanks.
enjoy it very much.
The
Namaste,
time
Ron.
zones. Namaste.